Almost live. Here we go. We're live. It's
is.
official. This is our first interview, content
There it is.
content podcast after 43 episodes of me and Derek every Sunday. You know, and Derek's giving us a tour right now of
Yeah.
the bathroom right there.
I'm slipping and falling. I can't get up. What can I say?
So yeah, man, I'm so excited, man. We got Townsend on here. He's been all over the place. I mean, like 74 different countries. I don't know how many miles hiked. Like, I got my little camping shirt.
Yeah, it's fitting, man. I love it.
And I got my little camping mug too.
Hey, you're ready, bro.
Oh, Mike,
I'm ready. The only thing
it.
I was looking for a cold beer, but
Hey,
I forgot to put them in the fridge, so I kind of blew that.
I'll have one. I got one for you,
He's got
bro.
one
I'll have
for me,
one.
so it's
in
all
your
good.
honor, in your absence, I got it.
So yeah, man. So this is our first Townsend. You know, like, and remember I told you a while back. I was like, man, I want to have you up on the podcast, and it took a while because we wanted to start the interviews this year.
Yeah, very cool.
But you are the first guest, man. Like, you know,
I'm honored, bro.
If content gets legendary status, like, you know, in 5-10 years from now,
Let's go.
you're the first guest, like the first official guest.
Name it and claim it. Let's go. Yeah, I'm honored. I'm really happy to be here. I'm honored to be here, and you know, I love good dialogue and just good discussion about things that are important and things of substance and depth. So I'm excited to be here.
Beautiful, man.
Yeah, it's great to have you, Townsend. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks.
Yeah, our first late night show, late night being 7 p.m. for us at Content Content, because normally at 8 a.m. So this is many hours. Many hours past my bedtime. But this should be very fun. Thank you again, of course, for coming on. Just first question off the top: how do you guys know each other?
That's what me and Michael were just talking about. So I'll put it this way. Right. So I know from me, I'll just be candid and blunt about it. I accept pretty much any Facebook thing that comes my way in terms of friend requests. And I think it was probably a thing where I don't remember if he requested me or if I requested him. I don't remember that much, but because he does music, or has done music in the past, music is also a very big part of my background. I did singing and songwriting, touring, you know, music production, stuff like that. I studied it in college. So it has a very deep roots in my life. And I have a feeling that we just ended up hearing about each other through that method, you know, at some point over probably a year or two ago, more than likely. You know. Yeah,
and I think the same thing, and I can't place it either.
Right.
But then I got this Facebook friend who's putting up these incredible pictures. These like, this guy's hiking all over the place, and he's saying. But one of the things that really struck me was you put up a post one time, and you said that you were just basically on a hike, and then you all of a sudden find this magnificent waterfall, which is like uncharted, that you know no one exactly knew it was there or anything. And I remember you said, and I'm not going to say where it is because I want to keep it, you know, the way it is, pristine like that.
I know exactly which one you're talking about too.
And how does
and no one else does.
This is I would just like to know, because ever since I saw that, how does that feel, man? Like to just be hiking, and then all of a sudden you must have heard the water like.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And then,
you hear it from a distance. Like, you're basically just kind of navigating through the terrain. You know, that was one in Washington State. I don't remember the national forest that it was in. Pinchon, George, something like that. I can't remember actually the name of the national forest that it was in, but just kind of navigating through. I was out there with my buddy, and we were looking for waterfalls, particularly on that trip. We had just finished hiking a massive mountain a couple of days before that, and camping up there. And then we had like an extra day to spare before we were going to fly back home. So we just kind of like picked an area in the national forest. We had heard of one waterfall that was in the area. So we went to that one, and that was like, we had done research on that when we knew that was going to be out there. So we found that one as well, found it. But then phenomenal. I've never ever that. Just in terms of the variety of the water, the way that it was flowing off of the rocks, and just the angles that it was going, and just the direct. It was amazing. It was absolutely astonishing spot. I've never ever seen something like that. And then to be able to capture it in photography, you know, with proper gear, is also a privilege, honestly, to be able to do that and share the experience with people that way.
Wow.
Yeah, let's. I want to jump back just real quick. Let's just say for any listeners, viewers of content out here, Townsend James, a travel photographer, mountain climber, world traveler. Also, townsendjames.com. You can check out his work. You can buy his prints. Highly recommended. Dude, when I saw your pictures, I was like, holy shit, man. You have some like
guys.
absolutely gorgeous photos. Highly recommend it to anybody.
Thank you so much.
Included. So just as a primer here, first question for content and stuff like that. And it doesn't have to be super involved, but like, what is your religious and or spiritual background, or how is it that you came to be interested in these kinds of things?
I mean, for me, spiritual background is I was born and raised Christian, born and raised in church, and I think, like, I don't know how familiar you guys are with Christianity, if that's something that you ascribe to as well. But for the majority of Christians that I navigate with and talk through, it's kind of a consistent across the spectrum of being raised in church is a very common story. And then across the board of like around teenage years, you kind of get into certain things. You kind of are discovering who you are spiritually. What does it even mean to, follow God? Who is God? What do you believe? And you go to college and all that stuff gets challenged as well in certain ways. And you're just exploring that whole entire time. And as a 30-year-old man now, I can honestly and genuinely say I'm a firm believer in Jesus. I'm a Christian. But I'm not. I was trying to tell Michael before the show, like, I have no issue explaining to people, and I stand by it. I'm not a typical Christian of what I think the preconceived stigma is of Christians. I don't have an issue with passionate language. I don't have an issue with drinking beer. I don't even have an issue with smoking. I don't, there's many things that I think that my concentration could go into more, in terms of just loving people fiercely and passionately and serving them selflessly, rather than debating over the intricacies of certain elements of Christianity. It's just, I just want to love people.
Yeah, really, I love that, man. That's beautiful, man.
Yeah. Agreed. And really, I think that's ultimately what we're kind of trying to do with this show, is that
awesome.
Religion has, for some good reasons, like a real bad rap in a, say, modern American context. But there are those things. And I think, honestly, I don't know, Mike, maybe you would push back against this, but I think the most level-headed Christians would agree with Townsend that, look, I'm not so caught up on this specific part of the Bible where it says you got to hate these people and that you can never, ever do that. So that's what Mike and I are kind of trying to do with this show, is like, we always say, don't drown the baby with the bathwater. A lot of that stuff can go in terms of the authority and the power structure and, keeping people down or disrespected, not liked. That stuff can go. But that respecting your fellow man, that needs to be brought back into focus.
Absolutely.
Now, when you were a kid going to church, were you like, oh God, I hate this? So I feel like most folks were, right?
I think at that point, I hit a certain age where I wasn't interested in it anymore. But I think for the first probably 12 years of my life, I wasn't opposed to it. I didn't have an issue with it. Because I had plenty of friends there at Sunday school. I had things to do. Me and my sister, we'd sneak into the church kitchen and like steal the grape juice and the bread and stuff like that. That's what we would do. And get mischief and stuff like that. Hey, it was cool. And we had extra communion, extra blessing.
Even more blessed.
That's right. No, it was fun. I mean, for me, growing up in church was fun. I went to a Christian school through 4th grade, and then in 5th grade is when I transferred to public school for the first time. And so that was an interesting transition. At the private school, it was very rigorous and strict to a certain extent of like even just, you can't wear shirts with like images on them and only on Fridays, stuff like that. Just those types of conservative ideals and stuff like that. And they totally have informed me up to this point even, and they shape who I am. Anytime you experience stuff like that and those types of transitions, going from private to public in that dynamic, wow, this is a whole different ballgame over here. Wow, way different. And it helps inform you, and it kind of shapes you being cultured in a way, but more spiritually cultured and religiously cultured rather than a different form of being cultured. But it helped a lot in that way.
So then when did you start getting into which came first, your interest in photography or your interest in like mountain climbing and traveling and stuff like that?
Interest in mountain climbing first, for sure. Yeah, that kind of started back in 2015. It was really only 5 years ago. I've really only been doing photography legitimately for about a year and a half. But yeah, mountain climbing and hiking was definitely back in 2015. I remember the moment specifically. It was interesting because, being born and raised in Virginia, in the mountains. That's where I'm at right now. Actually, I'm in Virginia, and I'm just hanging out with my parents actually at their place. They live in the mountains in a town of 2,000, majority white people in the mountains, small town, 10 minutes from West Virginia, 3 stoplights in the town, more cows than people. This is where I was born and raised. But they're from New York originally, so that's an interesting dynamic as well, with a city mindset, but being raised in the country with a city mindset. But mountains have surrounded me my whole entire life. The Blue Ridge Mountains, Shenandoah National Park. It's literally 20 minutes from here. But I can count on one hand, maybe 3 to 5 times that between the ages of birth and 25 that I actually hiked on a legitimate hike and went out and did that, or camped. Actually, never camped until I never officially legitimately camped on my own, out in the wilderness. For the first time, I did that back in September, just a couple months ago, which is awesome to me because it's like I was able to accomplish all these other hikes without actually doing the camping. And I really prepared myself for camping through doing all of those other hikes, and all those other expeditions. But yeah, it was back in 2015 that it all started for me. It was definitely mountain climbing first, and then photography followed back in 2018, I would say.
Wow. Oh man, that's great. And also I feel like that's an encouraging thing, because I was totally ready for you to be like, oh, I started when I was like 5. And
no, not even close, man.
Also, your photos
not
so
even
beautiful,
close,
man. A year and a half.
Thanks.
Goddamn.
Yeah.
And it's also encouraging. Something we always say on the show frequently too is like, if a person feels compelled to do something or take on a new task or start doing a new thing that they don't normally do, there's a lot of times I think a lot of social pressure to continue to be the person that you have previously been.
Absolutely.
And I mean, maybe there were some folks in your life who were like, what are you doing around climbing mountains all the time? What's the big deal?
No, it's true. I was explaining earlier about with me doing music and stuff, and that was a huge part of my life. Honestly, a huge part of my identity for 10 years, really, from high school 16 through 26, 27. I was just music. I was the guy that did music in my local little town here. That was me. And then, moved from here to Atlanta, got a record deal, toured the world, did shows, gigs. It was awesome. But it became a huge part of me. So to go from that to then it just kind of fell off out of nowhere. And I can't explain it to people. I've had plenty of people who followed my music and supported me. They're like, they pop up randomly sometimes, like, are you still doing music? Do you still plan on doing music? Like, why don't you do music anymore? One guy actually messaged me one time, and he was just like, he's like, dude, I feel like if you committed as much energy as you do into your photography, into your music, you could win a Grammy or 2. And I just wrote him back. I'm like, well, why can't I do both passionately? Like, why can't I be involved in both?
It's crazy because
it was just a funny comment to me.
We have a whole thing, and that's what Derek was talking about, and we call it painting. And we have sort of this story of a guy who, we just kind of made it up one day on one of the shows where, he was this beer drinking guy who likes to hang out with his buddies. And that's what he's known for. He's just like, this sports fan type of guy. And then all of a sudden one day he discovers that he loves to paint, and he starts painting. So that his friends start clowning him like, yo, what are you doing, man? Like, you're going to paint? But he loves it. So our kind of thing that we say on the show is that we should all paint. So we should always, even if it goes against our identity, what people know us for, if there's something that's inspiring us and it's different, we should paint. And it's kind of cool that that's what you did, and you kind of described it there. You went from, and it's actually similar to my story a bit too, doing music.
I was going to say, Mike, you probably have some similar kind of stories.
Yeah, it's very similar, being so locked into, he'll probably call back up and get back in. Looks like he got disconnected, but so, being so connected to music, and then going from from music to what me and you are doing now, Derek, and it's just something completely different, and
how
it's kind
funny
of
is
cool.
that he had a perfect example of painting right there.
Yeah,
It's like, well, everybody knew me as the music guy, and then I started climbing mountains, and people were like, stop doing that.
Stop doing it. Exactly, and that's perfect, and it speaks to what we talk about on the show a lot, man, and I think it's pretty cool that he had that example, and
yeah, I agree.
yeah, man. So hopefully he kicks back in, or this will be a Sunday episode on a Wednesday, pretty
Do we
much.
have to talk about faith all of a sudden?
So yeah, man. So I did get some new lights here. I don't know if it's any better or worse.
I was gonna say you're looking great over there, man.
A little better. Okay, good.
I think it looks
back.
fantastic.
All right,
Wi-Fi
man.
went out. Sorry about that, guys.
Oh, it's fine, man. No problem.
Worries.
So right. Yeah, so I think we were just summarizing, of that story. I don't know how much of it you heard, but about painting, and it's basically the idea of painting is doing something that everyone else doesn't know you for, because you feel inspired for it, and then everyone's gonna make fun of you and be like, like let's say if you were just this guy who loves sports and he just loved, just hanging out, drinking beer, and you just bugging out with his friends, and then all of a sudden they're like, bro, you're gonna go paint now again? Like, what are you doing, man? Come and hang out with us. Like, that's not you, man.
Right.
And we talk about how you do have to be sort of brave and go and follow that passion, which, and it's very similar what you were saying to my story too, because I'm mostly known for music and stuff, and the things I'm doing now with the podcast and different stuff like that, and the things we talk about, it's not music, but like you, it's something I'm passionate about, and we talk about it a lot, and so it's pretty cool that you are actually an example of someone who's painting.
Yeah, no, it's the truth. I mean, it was kind of like a seamless transition for me. It happened overnight. I was trying to explain, as I explain it to people, is I still love music. I adore music. I'll never ever forsake or discredit music at all, but it's just not a priority for me. I think when it became such a job, and I just started losing passion for that, it just made it, I don't know, not enjoyable anymore. And there were things that also happened, intricacies and politics in the industry and certain things that happened with the record label. It just turned me off to the whole, that side of it. And it's just like, I don't know if I'm wired for this type of, some people can deal with it. They can deal with those intricacies and just navigate through them. And it doesn't really affect their heart too much, or like their spirituality, but it rocked me, and it kind of fucked with me in a way that I was just like, I don't know if I could still stay in this too much longer. That's not who I am. I don't really want to be involved.
I totally can relate.
And I think the fact of the matter is that it takes courage and honestly, like, faith to be able to. There's plenty of people have jobs that they don't like, and they just grind away at it, and they're like, "Oh, it's totally miserable all the time." But it does take a leap of faith to be like, I'm going to do this other thing now because it's what I feel like I want to do.
Yeah, for sure.
I wonder, Townsend, like, do you consider there to be like a sort of spiritual component to either mountain climbing or photography or all of that?
Absolutely, yeah. I think that, well, I'll preface it by saying I think the majority of what you experience out in nature, it does kind of hinge upon what you believe spiritually. Do you believe in a creator? Do you not believe in a creator? Do you believe in God? Do you not believe in God? And it's not right or wrong either way. It's just, that's going to inform your experience, in my opinion. Because I believe in God, because I believe that he created everything, because I believe that I am his creation. I know I have an obligation as his creation to honor him through my camera lens. Every time I click the shutter button, I'm trying to capture his creativity and honor him in that way. And that's kind of the way I approach it, because it gives me an added incentive to kick ass when I do it and be very creative and go above and beyond with it. And that's my spiritual component of it, is I connect with him as creator when I'm out there and I'm just witnessing this ridiculous beauty that is indescribable unless you can actually see it in person. The camera can only do so much. But when you see it in person, you're just like, holy shit, man. God is beautiful. Like, he's absolutely astonishing. These brush strokes are just, you can't describe it. You can't at all describe it. It makes me more in awe and wonder. And it helps me connect spiritually more with him, in my opinion.
Yeah, it can literally take your breath away. I was talking with Derek, about the show, and coming up with you, and I was like, I remember one time I was in Costa Rica and we did a hike, and we were at this waterfall, and it was just so, we were like right there, in front of it, and it was so powerful, and it was so blue, and the noise and just the force of it, literally, it took my breath away. And I learned for the first time, like, what, when people say, "Oh, it just took my breath away," like, it really
you
did.
get it.
It's magnificent. Yeah. So I bet that's has that happened to you many times?
Oh,
Probably
many times. Yeah. I mean, there's countless ones. There's a whole catalog in my head. I remember somebody left me a really cool comment one time on a picture, and it's kind of stuck with me ever since. They were like, dude, if I could only see what your eyes have seen, I would literally have a highlight reel of my whole life. I was like, that's really cool. I think that I agree with that.
Wow.
I'm very grateful.
I second that.
Yeah, I'm grateful, man. I'm very, very thankful. There's so many things I can't even begin to catalog the amount of beauty that I've seen in my eyes, natural beauty and also cultural beauty, with people. It's just, I do hiking and stuff, but I also love just regular traveling in cities and exploring, metropolises and seeing what those are all about and exploring different cultures and interacting with people. And that's fun. That's a lot of fun for me too.
Yeah, that is great, man. Like, is there, I guess each, obviously landscape is kind of its own thing. But, what is it that you're trying to capture, or what are you trying to frame when you're taking a photo? Given that it is, like, to some degree impossible, like you said, to capture the complete beauty of what it is you're looking at.
Yeah, I think my biggest focus is always on just capturing an experience, and whatever that is. It could be something as simple as a picture of a row of houses, but there might be something unique that I experienced with it. Maybe it was the challenge of getting the photo, or the actual, I'll do research in the history of how those houses were built, or something like that. It's just, I want to create an experience with every single photo that I actually capture, because I understand the dynamic that what I have available to me and my ability to travel the way I do at leisure, and for business purposes at this point, it's not the same dynamic that everybody has. And I'm very grateful for it. I'm super grateful for it, because I understand the privilege that it is to have that, and the responsibility it is to have that, to be able to capture so many things and see so many things. So I want to make sure that people who don't have that luxury that I have at the moment, that they can actually be there with me, present in the experience, even if they weren't there physically present within the experience, that I can relay it in such a way and convey it in such a way that they can see it, feel it, touch it, taste it through ways of imagery, photography, and word imagery as I describe them through my captions, or if I write a blog post about it. That's my goal every time, is to create an experience, even if the person wasn't there.
That's deep.
Yeah, that's a tall order, man. To try
to
capture, like, how do I take this? It's like putting lightning in a bottle, I suppose.
It's a great challenge. Yeah, it helps keep me creative.
Yeah, and again, if anybody wants to take a look at some of those photos, this is his website, townsendjames.com.
This is actually one of them right here. That's one of them on the wall.
Oh, yes, I love that one.
That's one of my favorite shots from Tokyo.
I love that one.
Yeah, man.
And if anybody also out there wants to throw a question at us in the comments, we'll put it up on the screen. Also, we'll try and get that in there if anybody would like to ask a question.
This is, I guess, a little bit separate from photography in and of itself, Townsend, but like, what do you think there is to be learned from nature? Or like, what's a feeling? Like, my short answer to this would be something like watching the ocean, watching the waves, and seeing the tide come in and come out. And then a wave has like all these parts to it, and there's the fine little end, and there's a strong base, and it crashes and it's big and loud, and then it just goes away. And it's this push and pull, yin and yang of life. What do you think there is to be learned? What's something you think there is to be learned from nature, from being out in nature?
I think two things. One would be our responsibility to care for something that we've been given. We've been given dominion over nature and over land. And so we have a responsibility to take care of that. And that was definitely really, really like honed in on me when I went out to Oregon a few months ago after the massive wildfires there. And there was one little tiny town in the mountains, probably like a couple hundred people lived there, but it was this tiny town called Delta, Oregon. And we drove through it, and every single house was burnt to the ground. It was crazy. Like you could see, even with like the melted down architecture, you could see where the old town gas station and grocery store used to be. Wow. And everybody's house is just demolished and destroyed. It was a ghost town, and all the trees were burnt. Some of the trees were still on fire, still smoking actually at that point. And it just made me realize, like, wow, you know, this is really intense, and we have a responsibility to take care of the beauty that's around us and do our part in that way. I'm not going to get on the whole climate change spiel, but it's the reality of that. We have a responsibility to take care of nature, and because nature does take care of us in that way. That's the way God designed the yin and yang. I love the way you described that. There is a balance, a give and take, a yin and yang that really does take place between us and nature. And I have a feeling, you know, I really believe that we have an obligation to actually respect that and nurture it properly. Second thing would definitely be, there's been probably hundreds of moments where I felt this one. I think nature is meant to teach us just how fucking small we are, and, you know, and really humble us to that way. There's been countless times where I'm looking at a mountain that is easily 4,000 times the size of me. And I'm like, yeah, literally one tiny little chisel of rock dropping off of that and hitting my head. I'm done. I'm out. I'm kaput.
Yeah.
It's like, that's a humbling moment where you're like, wow, I am at the mercy of God. I'm at the mercy of nature, and I am a very tiny piece in a very large ocean, in a story, you know. And nothing paints that better for me than seeing the immaculate, you know, grandeur of nature around me. And whatever it is, it could be the ocean, it could be the mountains, it could be trees, it could be snow, it could be ice, it could be animals, wildlife. All that stuff plays into that dynamic for me. And I think that those are the two things that nature has really shown me. And I hope that it would inspire people in a similar way if they had those same revelations or experiences, you know?
Yeah. Marina says in the comments, that's how I feel when I look at the ocean.
Yes, definitely. Yeah. I agree. Yeah. I'm glad it's a shared sentiment, Marina.
Yeah, most definitely. And, you know, it's beautiful the way you describe it too, because I'm also kind of, from what you're saying, feeling you feel small, you feel humble, but then at the same time, I'm also sensing a connectedness. So it's like this combination of, like, I'm this part of everything, and I'm this, what I feel like a small part, you know what I mean? But in within this, so it's like this sort of mix of emotion and
yeah, that's where for me the humble, the humility aspect of it, it stays there, but it transitions into honor. I'm humbled at first by recognizing that I'm a tiny piece in a big puzzle. And then when you actually process that and sit with that, kind of let that thought marinate, and you interpret it the way you desire to interpret it, and your interpretations are going to be, you know, fueled by your own experiences and stuff like that. But for me, when I interpret that moment of humility, it quickly shifts to honor. Like, wow, I'm honored to actually like be here in this moment. I'm honored to be witnessing this with my eyes. I'm honored to get to capture this with my camera. I'm honored to be created and actually like get to love people out. It's just, you have these massive revelations. And half the time it doesn't even happen with any drugs. It's just like a natural drug being out there. Just like, dude, I'm having a moment, and it's powerful. And I love it, and it happens for me all the time, you know, and I'm so grateful for that.
Yeah, we got a question out here.
Something we talk about on the show too is like, or I always think about it like a microscope. Like sometimes in life you get too involved in the day to day, and you're like, I gotta do this, I gotta do this, I gotta do this, and you're zoomed in too close, and you need to like zoom out and remember that you are just a little tiny speck, and it's so bizarre that we're here at this time, and so mathematically unlikely that, you know, it at least helps a little bit of perspective on that, like the day-to-day grind of, I gotta answer this email and I gotta call this person or whatever. And the opposite is true as well. Sometimes like you're too focused on, well, I want to be this rich and famous entrepreneur. And it's like, okay, well, but you have to start by this thing today. Let's take one step. And so, I always think of it in my head as like a microscope, that sometimes you got to zoom in, sometimes you got to zoom out.
Absolutely. I like that.
Things too we've talked about is like, you know, given that we are just one tiny little speck grain of sand, it can be very like intimidating because you're like, well, what can I do? What impact can I have? But the fact of the matter is, we are definitely a speck in the ever expanding universe.
Absolutely. I think that I had a conversation with my best friend last night. We were talking kind of a similar vein of what we're talking about right now. And I think that it all boils down to perspective, you know, in those moments, because that is a overwhelming feeling to a certain degree of like, well, I am small and I'm just a tiny part of creation when you look at everything around. But what was my role then? What is my purpose? What can I do to actually influence or impact change or bring about change? Or but that starts with baby steps. It's all one step at a time. It really is. It genuinely is that. And it could be something as menial and mundane and pedestrian as just the person you're interacting with at the gas station counter and asking them how their day was. And that could mean something to them. You have no idea what that's going to translate into them. They probably have 45 people walk past them every day and say nothing to them, don't entertain them, don't even really look at them as a human being. And then you come along, you just ask them a simple question. How's your day going? And they're like, it's going good. Thanks for asking. It's just like that little interaction is powerful. It's impactful. It seems menial and, you know, mundane, but in reality, there's deeper rooted things taking place in that. And that is where impact happens. It's small, it's tiny. It doesn't always have to be these massive scales. You can take actually that mindset of I am a small piece in a bigger puzzle and say, well, I'm going to take my small piece and make the most of it. You know?
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. And like, especially one of the things about modern life is that things are so busy and can be so overwhelming and stressful that, and even like, you know, living in New York City, it's like loud all the time. Man, one of the things about, I mean, obviously about nature is that it can be quieter. And just to be able to be at whatever location you're at and to experience like the stillness of and the quietude, again, just to kind of balance out, again, because modern life is so not like that.
Right.
It has to kind of give you like a little bit of a refresh on your perspective. And like you said, when you do interact with people, you're not like, oh my God, how are you? Like,
right. For sure.
Well, I'm skipping ahead a little bit, but I see Marina has a question here too, and it was something I wanted to ask you. She says, aside from capturing landscapes, do you photograph people in your travels and tell their stories through your art?
That's a really.
What do you say about that?
It's a great question. I thank you for that question, Marina. Yeah, I don't ever make it like a thing where I'm searching for that. There's been so many times, and this is my favorite part of it because I'm not looking for it. It just comes out of nowhere. And it's definitely manifested itself more recently in the last year, and particularly with couples. Couples that are either getting engaged or getting married or whatever it is. I just happen to randomly stumble across these scenarios where they didn't have a photographer to capture that moment, and they needed a picture taken for them. So I just take it, and then it's a really cool thing. It happened, the first time it ever happened to me was awesome. It was the coolest experience. It was in New Zealand, and I was at this lake on the South Island called Lake Wanaka, and I was there for sunrise. And like right after sunrise, I was walking back to the car. I got my pictures that I wanted of the lake, and I was walking back to the car, and I see this Asian couple, and they're in the wedding dress and the tuxedo, and it's just them two. There wasn't like a group of people with them. There was no photographer, no wedding, no family. Nothing was there. And I kind of like, I didn't know if they spoke English, but I went up to them and I was like, oh yeah, congratulations, you guys got married. And you know, in their broken English, they were like, yeah, but you know, we eloped. We didn't have enough money to do like, you know, a regular wedding. So we just kind of eloped. And I was like, oh, where's your photographer? And they're like, well, we don't have a photographer. We didn't have enough money for that. We just eloped. And I was like, well, would you mind if I took some photos for you guys? And they were just like, what, really? That would be amazing. So that was my first time ever actually doing like a photo shoot with people and directing people or giving them poses to do. But I just, you know, I think, again, those are for me moments where I feel like God put me in that moment to be there for them and love on them and serve them in that way. And it wasn't about me. It wasn't about doing a portrait session because I wanted to show off my photography skills. It was just, you're there, bro. Be present, love on them. There's nothing else that matters in that moment. and give them a gift that they can't repay you with. It's just, that's beautiful in my opinion. I wouldn't ask for anything else in that moment. And it was awesome. I got them like 10 pictures that were really cool. I loved that moment. It was amazing. And then it happened again. It happened twice in October, just a few months ago when I was traveling around for the autumn leaves and stuff like that. It happened with one couple that was, I had gone to this tiny little chapel that was buried in the woods. And there was like 2 other people there. And that was the couple that was engaged, and they were married, but they were celebrating their 10-year anniversary. And they were just kind of like renewing their vows with each other, right there on the front of the chapel. And they didn't have a photographer or anybody to capture the moment for them. And I was just like, would you guys mind if I take some pictures of you while you're looking into each other's eyes? It's a really beautiful moment. You're like sharing each other, your vows with each other. You're renewing that moment with each other. Can I capture that for you? And I'll email you the pictures afterwards. They're like, yeah, that would be amazing. So that was a cool moment. And then what I was telling you about, Michael, before we got on, was the couple that was when I did a hike in the Adirondacks in upstate New York back in October. And it was like 6 a.m. for sunrise. I get to the top. It's like a 10-mile hike. I get to the top and it's still dark out. Basically, the sun is barely starting to climb out. And I see these 2 people up there in their wedding party, and they had a wedding dress and a tuxedo. The parents were up there with them. Their photographer, videographer, their,
wow.
The officiator.
That's crazy to do that 10-mile hike to do your wedding.
Right. And that was the most badass part of it to me. Was like, I was like looking, once I realized what was going down, and I talked with the groom for a second. I just kind of chatted with the groom. I was like, oh, you guys, are you guys getting married? Are you getting engaged? Are these engagement photos? Like, no, these are wedding photos. We're getting married. I was like, holy shit, that's awesome. That's so cool. Like, and I realized the dynamic of what was happening. They had their whole fucking family there with them. I was like, wow, you got like your whole family to hike at 5 a.m. to start this hike, which means you probably woke up at 4, started this hike, and you hiked 7 miles through the woods to get to the top of this peak. It's not a flat hike. It was a very intense, like high elevation or a high incline hike to get to this cliff. And you get up there and there's nothing blocking the wind. So it's like 20 degrees temperature. The wind chill is making it feel like it's 0 degrees outside. Wow. But the view is just unreal. And it's just an absolutely astonishing moment. It's probably one of my favorite pictures that I got in all of 2020. And I posted it a couple of days ago before the New Year's, and it's just kind of, I do a recap at the end of the year with my favorite photos, and that was definitely one of them. It was a picture of them just kind of like looking at each other, and the wind was taking her dress, flowing her dress out into the oblivion, and out in the distance was the trees and the leaves and the mountains, and it was just amazing. It was an awesome moment. So stuff like that, for some reason I just get placed into those moments, and I know why now. I'm meant to be there, and I'm meant to help capture it and just interpret it and experience it for what it is and what it's meant to be in that moment. It's really awesome.
Yeah. Wow. What a moment.
That's so cool. It's cool. Those are amazing things.
Well, now let me pick back again off of Marina's comment here that she says, wow, it wasn't random. You were meant to be there.
I agree.
How much, this is a big philosophical question, Townsend, but how much free will do you think people have? This is another thing we talk a lot about on the show. Is it determinism? Is it free will? Is it a mix of both? How much of control? How much do we have no control? What do you think about that?
Literally just had a great conversation about this exact thing last night. It's awesome that we're talking about this. Like last night was preparation for this. That's great. Yes, I fully believe that we have free will. And I think that, again, it ties into what you believe spiritually, and what you believe philosophically, theologically, religiously. All those things tie into this viewpoint for me. So I know it's not going to be everybody's shared viewpoint. But I do believe we have free will. I believe that God created us with free will. He created us with autonomy, because anything otherwise would be forced upon us, and it would make us essentially robotic. And without free will, you can't make your own choices. So I don't think, if God is all about love, then he doesn't want fake love. He doesn't want no fake shit from us. So he wants real, authentic, genuine, chosen love. Therefore, he can't create us to force us to love him or love anything for that matter. We choose it. We choose free will. And it's like, and in that free will, during that process and course of that free will, his sovereignty is there, present at all times. It doesn't take a lap. It doesn't go on pause. His sovereignty is still supreme in that moment. He just gives us the free will, and he says, hey, I already know you. I created you. You're going to do whatever the hell you want to do. And I know that about you, but don't be mistaken in thinking that when you still do what you want to do, even if it's a wrong thing or a bad thing, that my sovereignty is not still here, because it is. I'm still going to work through your bullshit and make something beautiful out of it. And that to me is the essence of how free will can work in tandem with sovereignty, and autonomy can work with sovereignty. And I do believe that we have complete free will. And I think that that's the way God intended it. That's the way he prefers it. And if he didn't prefer it that way, then I think that life would look a whole lot different. We wouldn't have a desire to make our own decisions. We wouldn't even know what the hell that even means to make our own decisions. There wouldn't be choice. There would be a really weird world, to not have free will. Everything just pre-decided for you. And it's an interesting topic because I know it kind of flows into the whole concept of predestination, and that's a big Christian debate topic. And it's an interesting one, but I don't really have a lot to say on that part of it. It's just, I know that there's free will because we exercise it every day. From the minute we wake up, I choose to pick up my phone, or I can choose to look at a political ad or whatever the hell it is. I have free will at every aspect of the day, every aspect of my life. I have free will and autonomy over my life and over my decisions, over my choices. But I believe fully that God is there with me in his sovereignty, guiding me, even if I get off path. He's course correcting through his sovereignty.
Oof, love that at the end right there, man.
Yeah, me too.
So let's say like a person we mentioned a lot on the show as well is this Zen philosopher, Alan Watts, who I think of a lot. He says something along the lines of like a lot of the biggest philosophical questions or even biggest scientific questions don't have a proper answer because the question is not being asked the right way. Or rather, they're like creating a dichotomy that does not exist. Something like nature versus nurture. Well, it's both, and so it's not really like the two categories are not nature or nurture. And I think that is true of free will and determinism too. Like those aren't the two categories. That's a poor definition of existence or something like that.
Yeah.
But I love what you said there, which is that. Because, I think most people would agree. We have at least an element of free will. Some people believe it's all free will. I think there's a little determinism in there.
Gotcha.
But something that I find very encouraging is I really don't think you could make all the quote-unquote bad decisions you would like to. But you are never more than one step from the path.
Yeah.
Like the next step is always just right in front of you.
I agree with that.
Sometimes like people, this happened to myself too, where like you feel like you made mistakes and then you feel like they pile up on you. And then it just feels like, it'd be so much work. And that's how you get stuck in a job that you hate, by the way.
Right.
Oh, man,
very true.
It would be so difficult to like totally uproot who I am or all these decisions that I made. And it was my fault. So, what am I going to do? And that's again where you got to change that microscope a little bit, and you're looking too far back, and you got to zoom in and say, "No, man, there's two roads, just take a different one."
I think that people kind of always associate the topic of free will with something, some type of spiritual realm, and I agree that definitely it has a factor there. But free will shows up in the way of what you just described, even of. You're miserable at your job. Okay, well, go change that shit. Like you have the freedom to actually go change that about your life. So go do that. Go exercise your free will. Choose something new. Choose bravery. Choose courage. Choose change, and go do it. Like you don't have to sit in your rut and your bullshit. And I think so many of us settle for that because we don't choose free will. We think we're choosing free will, but we're actually not because we're choosing whatever else is influencing us to stay in something that we're miserable doing. Why would you actually choose that? Probably other factors that are not actually free will. You're choosing it because of influence from other things. Your parents want you to work that job. Society says you should always work this job. Your culture says you should work this kind of job, or it's not even job. It spans to everything. But when you catch yourself, I believe genuinely, when you actually catch yourself in a moment of, I know that I'm not actually doing what I'm supposed to be doing or who I am and who I've always aspired to be or who I really believe I should have been or what I've always been passionate about. It's like, all right, well, now it's time to course correct. You have the free will and the autonomy. God blessed you with that to actually make that decision for yourself and trust him with the process. He's not going to steer a parked car. You got to get shit moving and trust him with the rest.
Yeah, I think I know. I often think of like, I kind of think that the terms let's say I think God and like the common concept of the universe can sometimes be used interchangeably, and like I think of it as this massive, unbelievable supercomputer where like it gives you options, but you have to choose, and then based on that choice, it goes and recalculates everything and presents you with the next option, but you gotta choose. And you know, this kind of goes back to again being that small grain of sand, but you are there. And that is the thing. And people who are too deterministic, who are like, you know what, you know, it can be such an excuse that you're like, you know, I was an asshole to somebody last night, and I was like, it's God's will, man. I mean, what are you gonna do?
Yeah, exactly.
Like that's you also have to, like you're saying, like you got to take some responsibility.
Absolutely.
For the things that are the options that you do have.
Yeah, I like that. You can't steer a parked car.
Yeah, you can't.
That's great. That's great. I'm just FYI, something that happens on the show a lot is when a guest has a really great quote like that.
Yeah,
I just steal it.
Hey, do it, bro. I'm okay with that. Honestly, I don't remember. I probably stole it from a book or something I read a long time ago. I don't even remember where I heard that, but it's always stuck with me. And it's like, yeah, you don't steer a parked car. Something's got to be moving in order for steering to take place.
Yeah, that's good. No, it's a good way to. Sometimes it's nice to describe those complicated things because we can get really heady and intellectual sometimes. With stuff. And we can go, you know, down all sorts of roads, you know, like you said, predestination and all kinds, and look for black and white answers, and you know, it's this or that type of stuff. But sometimes, you know, and I always think that a lot of spiritual teachings, they end up being really communicated through stories or through a little phrase like that better than a long, complicated, taken apart intellectual conversation. Sometimes just a story, you know, of a situation and how it happened, or a parable. Those things really communicate well, you know. That's why I like those little things like that. You know, it's not complicated, it's straightforward. And it says it pretty plainly. You know, but we can take that, hijack it, and you know, we can talk for 3 hours, you know, easily. That's what we do.
For sure.
One I stole from my brother is he says, "Man can reason anything," and it's true. We can, you know, we can you know, call something wisdom, and it's just explaining a way for us not to face our own demons.
Right.
You know, we just throw stuff around. We can work so much in the intellect. Right. But sometimes, you know, those things.
You can manipulate anything you want, really.
Yeah, really. If you want to, you can. Yeah. And then you just find 2 or 3 people that are doing the same thing as you, and now you're in business. You know, you're patting each other on the back, and you
got your little militia.
Yeah, you got your the me incorporated going.
Oh my
you know.
Goodness. Yeah, it's so true. It's true. That's a good point. You can reason anything. If you're convicted enough about it, or especially if it's something you really don't want to have happen, you can reason enough to actually make sure it doesn't happen in your life.
It's a scary thought.
Yeah,
it's a scary thought because it makes you really think about everything. Like, damn, am I doing that for this? Exactly. Am I doing that for that?
Yeah, that's the truth. I think one of the most interesting things, you know, that I've probably spiritual revelations I've had over the last year, probably a year or two. 2020, I think, just heightened everything for me in that regard. But it's perfectly okay to not have an answer to something that is really deep and philosophical and theological. And so I have countless conversations with people who don't follow God. They don't ascribe to Christianity. They might not know what they believe, or maybe they follow a completely different religion. And I love those conversations. I live for those conversations. I could talk to anybody about that stuff, and I absolutely adore it. But it's when they present questions that ultimately make me want to shift to apologetics, where I'm defending the faith of Christianity. It's like, you don't have the answer to everything, first of all, TJ. So get yourself in position there. Realize that. 2, it's perfectly okay to not have an answer to everything. There's nothing wrong with acknowledging, you know what? I don't really know. I don't know. I don't know predestination. I don't have a fucking answer to that. I have no idea. I'm not God. I'll never be God. I don't know his mind in totality. If I could understand him in his totality, he would not be God. So therefore, it's okay to actually acknowledge there's just genuinely things we are not in our human capacity meant to understand. And we have to be at peace with that.
Yeah. And you know, that's so crazy. You just touched on another theme in content, which is we know that we don't know.
Hey, love that.
And we that's like one of the main mantras for us.
Yeah.
And you know, and by saying that, you claim that you know you don't know. So there's the circle of craziness that we can get ourselves tangled up in with our intellect, you know?
Totally.
And it's and I love what you described too, because there's a you know, a lot of people say it's humility, but I've come to start to think it's just being honest.
Totally. Yeah,
you know,
I agree with
because a lot of people, when let's say when someone talks the way you just did, I do believe it is humility, but they like overemphasize. Yeah, he's being humble, but really it's just being truthful.
Yeah.
You're just being honest. You don't. It's like digging in yourself and like, you know, I don't know everything. You know,
Right.
and then on top of that, it's being kind to yourself, which is another theme of the show. You're being kind to yourself by saying, and that's okay to not know everything. I don't have to beat myself in the head and try and find the black or white answer to this big question. No, it's this, you know, and then walk around, worst of all, you know, on a soapbox, beating people in the head with that exact answer. No, it's this way, you know, which I have a Christian background too. So I know it can get kind of crazy with that sometimes, and people just want to say, no, this is what it is, and if it's not that, then you're wrong, and maybe you're going to hell. You know, it's like
I know plenty of them as well. Trust me, I know plenty of them, and it's kind of what I was talking about in the beginning of the show. It's I just get frustrated sometimes with Christianity and the church primarily, just because I feel like we spend so much time debating the intricacies of Scripture, or the genealogy of Scripture, or the chronological data of Scripture, rather than just doing what the fuck Jesus said to do. Just love God and love others. Period. Those are the two most important.
Which is what he said to do.
Those are the two most important commandments. All the other shit is really irrelevant when you think about it. It's like, go love people. They'll know you by your love for me and your love for them. They're going to know you're my disciples by the way that you love them. Like, that to me is just like, hello, you don't need to talk about anything else. It really is nothing more that's relevant at that point. Go love people.
You know, it's crazy for some reason. And this is another thing we do on the show. It's called revelation through conversation. And we believe in that strongly. And that just happened to me, because while you're saying that, I'm also thinking about, you know, how we were saying, just to be honest. And a lot of times when we get into those situations where someone's like very dogmatic, or there's this or that, and by being honest and just saying that, you just, you know, we don't know the whole picture. That alone could disarm everything. And maybe part of the reason why people do that, and this is what just popped up to me, maybe part of the reason they do that is to not face themselves, to not really dig in, and to not really do that hard work within yourself to be like, well, maybe, you know, there's some things about me that I got to work on. Because when you're too, this is something I've been thinking about a lot lately too, when you're too sin conscious, whatever, that can be beating yourself up, being critical. You don't even have to be a Christian to be sin conscious. You could just be really hard on yourself. You know, like I'm messing up every day. I'm no good.
Understand right and wrong.
Yeah, you're just sin conscious all the time. Just that projects to other people, because if that's how you look at yourself, now you're looking at everybody else, and you're going to be sin conscious of everything everybody else is doing, and you're moving out of that love space.
It's your mode of deflection.
And there you go. And I think that's, you know, that's everything you said, you know, it really connects, you know, and those are some themes that we have on the show, you know, knowing we don't know, revelation through conversation. And that happens a lot, you know, and that's why we love these talks, because you do learn something if you have an open conversation, that there's no real dogma, and there's nobody on their soapbox. And it's really just being honest about, you know, this happens and that happens. So,
well,
you know, and
I think it's all about perspective. It's really like when you acknowledge, because you're going to have two different camps. Any person can acknowledge, I don't know the answer to that. I don't have the answer to that. I don't know, actually. And you're either going to freak the hell out by that realization of like, oh my God, I don't know that, and I need to know that. I need to know everything. Or you're going to look at that same scenario and say, it's actually beautiful that I don't know that, because now it gives me something to learn, gives me something to recognize I can grow in, something to discover. You know what I mean? It's like,
and that's exciting.
Yeah, the first tattoo I ever got was just 2 words right over my heart. It says "still learning," and that's it. And I want that to be like my mantra. By when I'm on my, if
You
you know, God willing, I actually experience like a peaceful death, and I get to 85 years old, and I'm on my deathbed. I'm in the hospital watching whatever the hell's on TV at that point. I want to still learn something right there in that moment at 85,
That's
like
beautiful,
from the
man.
nurse that's attending to me, or from somebody walking around the hospital
Yeah,
room. Like I want to
that's
learn
beautiful.
something in that moment. Still learning,
And
always.
still learning for me can
Mhm.
also say still living.
Yeah. Ooh,
Because
yeah. I like
if
that.
you stop living when you stop learning,
Yeah. Very true.
because
Yeah.
the excitement of living is, wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Wow, look at this new mountain. Wow, I
Yeah.
didn't know that the you know, as you, let's say, all the stuff you've seen, you know, you're still gonna see something soon
Yeah.
that's gonna
Totally.
blow your mind.
Yeah.
And that's the
Yeah.
excitement, because you're still learning. You're still like, you might learn a different, you might have gone on a certain hike already, but then you learn something different. If you would have walked a mile more on the
Mhm.
ridge, it
Mhm.
breaks open into something crazy.
Yeah.
There's
Totally.
still more there, even if you're in the same business, even if you're doing the same thing over and over. Sometimes, if you love it and you're excited about it and you're still learning and you don't think you know everything,
Yeah.
it can still be amazing.
Yeah.
It's the,
This
like you
life,
said,
man.
perspective.
This
Perspective.
life. This life is beautiful and massive and grand, and we do ourselves a very huge discredit by not seeking to explore it in its full depth. You know. And I think that that includes nature as well. It's not just life, like
Amen.
nature is encompassed within the life that we live. So everything around us is just immaculate and designed with intention, and detail and purpose. So to not actually explore that and to assume you just understand everything, or that you want, that you need to understand everything, it's a huge discredit, because you don't actually open yourself up to realizing, like, damn, I want to go explore life. I want to take life by the balls and just fucking kill it. I want to experience life in such a way that, like my future generations can brag about for, millennia.
Yeah.
Like that's what I want. That's what the legacy I want.
Well, I think you're on the right track for it.
I'm trying, man.
Listen, man, if I can do just like 4 or 5 of the hikes you've done and see the things you've done, I'm gonna be pretty happy. And
Yeah.
that's my goal. If I can do 4 or 5, I've got a little bucket my wife gave me, for like the bucket list.
Nice.
I'm putting certain places on. I'm put like 5 of them. One of
Dope.
them definitely has to be I got to see the sequoias in California.
Yeah.
Never seen that. I got to see that. That's number
Yeah.
one. And then from there, I'm probably just gonna go on your site and just look at some stuff and just
That's
write.
awesome.
I'm gonna just dump in like 4 or 5 more from looking at some of the stuff that you've taken pictures of.
That's the goal, man. I have so many people message me like, "Yeah, you helped me add places to my bucket list." I'm like, perfect. That's all I want to
Yeah,
do.
man. Yeah.
That's great. I want to inspire other people to go see the same stuff and go create their own adventures. That's what I want.
I would like to ask here just quickly, Townsend, like,
Yeah.
just to fan out a little bit, like, do you have a favorite place that you've been? Do you have a place that maybe like thought like, I know what it'll be like, and you got there and you're like, oh my God.
Yeah, funny enough. So there's 2, but it's actually the way you worded it was interesting right at the end. Like you thought you knew what it would be like, and then you get there and you're like mind blown. That was Turkey for me. Going to Turkey, and the crazy part, I was only in Turkey for like 36 hours, and I was just in Istanbul, just kind of exploring the city. I was on a time crunch, and I just got in whatever I could in 36 hours. But I had a very significant preconceived notion before I went there. And a lot of that was probably fed by media and stupid shit that you're seeing on, at that point. It was like 7 or 8 years ago. There was riots going on in the city at that point. There was unrest in Istanbul at that point, but I still went, and I wasn't anywhere near any of that stuff when I was staying there. But there's preconceived notions. They're a predominantly Muslim culture. They don't respect women. These are all these different notions that you have of them, and even if they are true per se, they shape how you're already walking into the scenario, expecting some bullshit. Expecting something that you're really like, you're on edge, you're on guard, you're not actually open to the idea of discovering something new. Everything we just talked about 5 minutes ago. And when I got there, it was awesome. I remember like within 20 minutes of getting into the city, I started walking around and I was trying to find a rooftop to go up and get a picture of the Blue Mosque, which is this massive mosque that's there right in the heart of Istanbul. And I was trying to get a clear shot of it without any trees blocking or anything like that. And I couldn't find anything. So I just stumbled across this guy who owned a rug shop. You know, carpets and handmade rugs are really popular there. And I was trying to talk to him and just like, you know, do you know of a rooftop anywhere nearby that I could walk to and go get a picture? And he's like, actually, I have a rooftop in my shop. And I was like, would I be able to use that? And he's like, yeah. He's like, do you want to come in for tea as well? You can have a cup of tea before you go up there, and I'll show you some rugs. And I was like, okay. So then he gave me like 4 cups of tea, this beautiful like homemade apple tea that they make out there. Then he took me up on the roof and let me take the pictures I wanted. And we talked for like an hour and a half on his couch down in the shop, and he was just showing me these rugs. We talked about his life, his history, his marriage. He talked about me. I was only like 22 at that point, 23, so I was a young kid still, and it was just cool. Like that was an awesome experience. And it was a very weird phenomenon when I was there. And the reason it's interesting is because of what was discovered later on was out of all 74 countries, Turkey is the one place that for some reason, when I was there over those 36 hours, I felt like it was home. I was like, I feel like I could live here. I don't know why I feel that, but I feel like I could belong here. I could live here. I could get along very well here and fit in very well here. I don't know why I feel that, because I don't feel that anywhere else I traveled to. And then like a year later, our family took our DNA test and stuff like that. It came back that we always thought we were 100% Italian. Came back, we were 40% Turkish, 30% Italian, 20% Spanish, 10% Egyptian. I was like, wow, that's fucking weird. I was like, that's so weird.
See,
like
that's
all the places.
Yeah. And I'd like to make a note here, okay, for people who listen to our show, because this is something we've been touching on. Yeah. And we talk because there, you know, a lot of people look for like this scientific proof of God or of source, you know, for everything, rather than, you know, just the idea that it's, you know, it's just randomness and this and so they me and Derek, we talk a lot about spiritual things and things that we believe, you know, that kind of hit us. And now what you just said to me is we don't have a laboratory. We can't go and do an experiment. We can't and then tell you, okay, this is how it works. Yeah. But the laboratory is the heart. And when you felt that, and then you got the confirmation, right? To me, that's proof of source, of God, of something greater. Yeah. And it frustrates me because, you know, I have good friends who are very you know, they're like very scientific. Yeah. And they want everything to be that way. And I love science. Yeah. But I am fascinated by it. It excites me. I learn things from it. I'm in it. Yeah. But I'm just trying to somehow, you know, explain to them that you're the laboratory. When you got to go in, you got to dig in. And why do I believe that someone like you felt that and acknowledged it? Because you're digging in, you're sitting there, you were open enough, and you had all this bad information about this place, but you were listening to source. Within 20 minutes, you felt that peace inside, and you were like, well, this doesn't seem like it. And you had a conversation, you got open, and then your defenses that you didn't need anymore were put down. I mean,
just straight up honest, like he put my guard down immediately when I met that guy. He didn't seem like the arrogant, patriarchal Muslim who hates Americans and white people. Like he didn't come off like that. And that was my notion before going there. I didn't know what to expect, but that's what I was already trying to project and create within my own mind. And then that just got shot to shit immediately. And I'm so thankful it got shot to shit, you know, and I got proven wrong in that way.
And it's so cool that it happened to you at like an age of 22 also. Yeah. Because I'm sure that really helped you to start questioning other things.
Totally.
You know, 100%. That one thing you said, man, I was told this. And then, but man, it was nothing like that. And I believe that probably set a foundation for you to be like, next time that I'm getting all this information about something, I'm going to think about it a little bit more. I'm not just going to go with the flow on that and be like
the hype anymore.
Yeah. And that's beautiful, man. This was great, man. I mean, it was a very content. If you've never listened to the show, this is what the show is. And I'm very happy because this was really like our first interview, and it went in a direction, that we normally go, which is nice, and
we're right
and we don't even know you, before today, which is awesome. And that's to me, that's another testament, because I don't know you before today.
Right. And same here.
Derek does, but we're on a wave.
Yeah.
And when you say something, because I'm going inward too, it makes sense to me, and I understand it. And if that to my scientists out there, that's a little bit more proof too, because if you can talk to somebody that you've never met and they say something, and it's like, yeah, I know what you mean, and I can come with my proof in my laboratory, which is inside of me, and I just want to read this last comment before we close, because it's a nice one. Marina says, "You've inspired me to stop making excuses and travel outside of this hemisphere." Thank you.
Wow.
That's
awesome.
There's your taking pictures of weddings for this episode.
That's powerful. Thank you. I really appreciate you sharing that, Marina.
That's beautiful.
Thank you for choosing to share that and be transparent with that. That's awesome. That honors me. Appreciate that a lot. It's awesome.
Yeah, man. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Yeah, guys, it was fun. It was a good conversation. I appreciate it.
It was a good conversation, and hopefully maybe we can have you back on, and we can get more in depth, and now that you got the groove of the show and what we're talking about, and
next time let's set it up where I got like satellite Wi-Fi and I'm at a mountain peak of like 12,000 feet up, and we could do it that way.
Bet.
That'd be fun.
Listen, how's this sound? If you're ever, by providence or synchronicity, whatever word we want to use, if that ever happens, call us. If you hit up a mountaintop and anytime, we'll just record it and we'll go live. And you're like, oh my God, there's a guy there with a satellite. Yo, bro, can I use your satellite real quick? Can I just use that real quick? I gotta call Derek and Mike.
$5 rental fee for your satellite Wi-Fi.
Exactly.
so Venmo you once I'm on the satellite Wi-Fi.
We're wide open. I'm fine for a random call. Yo, Mike, call Derek. I'm at a satellite and I'm in the middle of like this amazing.
I'm at Everest Base Camp currently.
Yeah, there you go. Thanks again, bro.
Yeah, guys, honored.
All right, that was great.
All right, stay on, Townsend. Yeah. I'm gonna end it though. Thanks everybody for tuning in, and thanks for the comments. Peace. See you next time. See you Sunday.